On this episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast, we are continuing our Picard primer, discussing the Next Generation's Descent, Part 1 and 2. We're talking the story, our favorite quotes, trivia, and Matt is presenting his Just a Drone song, inspired by the episode Descent 1 and 2, and it's coming up right after this.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name's Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
What's up, buddy?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Everything's all crazy and busy.
Oh, yeah?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm having a good time writing a lot of songs and, just more songs that I've ever written in my life, especially trying to write them and taking them through the whole production process every week is just really rewarding and fun. But it's also made my life really hectic in a way that feels silly, but also rewarding. So whatever, having a good time.
I hear you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm excited for you because I've always kind of wondered why you never really wrote songs about all these geek properties that you're such a fan of.
Well, I have, but not so on the face of it. And also, I think, it is interesting. It's an interesting question. And this is really not for the Star Trek podcast. This is more of a Matthew Carroll podcast discussion we should have. But which does exist, guys. Matthew Carroll podcast. Go subscribe. But I think I have growing up, I had a vision of what an artist was and the kind of artist I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And I kind of felt like writing nerd songs would discredit my other kind of songwriting. But what I didn't realize was, I guess I only had bands like Ookla the Mock and kind of filk style songwriting that's sort of silly in a lot of aspects.
Sure.
But what I've done is poured my own brand of creativity into these songs, and they're turning out not silly to me. They definitely have silly parts in them, but like I'm really trying to write from my either write an emotional song about these characters or write a song that I connect to emotionally. And this one that today is no different. And I'm really excited to share it with everybody at the end of the podcast. So, we'll get to more about that later, but it's been really rewarding. And I guess I should have just known, no matter what you're writing about, you're still the artist that you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I'm finding it very rewarding in a way that I didn't expect. I thought this was just going to be kind of a fun, silly project. It's turning out, I'm coming out with some songs that I'm actually emotionally invested in, and that's kind of neat.
And to be fair, some of the songs that have touched me the most in my life have been from silly bands who did something that related to geek culture, and Ookla the Mock has 3 songs that made me cry.
Interesting. See, and I have not had that. I haven't had that experience, so I guess that's why. That's why I didn't see that as a thing that would happen, but it's happening, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm hoping that it's forging a trail of a kind of music that hasn't, maybe I'm taking, I do feel like most music that is done about genre fiction like this is done in sort of a silly way. And maybe since, when you think about Led Zeppelin and stuff where they're writing about Tolkien, it's no different than that, and that music's taken very seriously, and it's I don't know. I'm having fun. I'm not trying to be taken seriously by any means. I'm just trying to write stuff that means something to me, and not just write silly songs. So it's kind of fun.
I'm digging it either way. I mean,
thanks, man.
Whatever you have to say about my taste.
Hey, somebody's digging it. That's all I care. So if somebody's digging it, that's fun.
Yeah,
I'm digging it, and that's already good enough for me. Just doing stuff in my bedroom by myself and not spending money. Because that's the thing, I wrote an album 2 years ago and made it, but that album cost me $30,000 to make, and I can't afford to do that every year. And this one is going to cost me nothing, maybe a little bit, but not very much, and it's going to be hopefully fulfilling and take a lot less time and money. So that's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. And yeah, just excited about the prospects for the future of what I can accomplish, being like, you know what? I don't care if it's perfect. It's going to be what I put out from my bedroom because that's what I can do right now. So
yeah, man. And that's great, man. Weeding that shit. Shoestring budget and very little time.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to the episode. I'm sorry that we did not intend to have a 5-minute discussion about the song up top.
I did.
Okay, well, thanks. I appreciate that. Let's talk about Descent. First off, we get that summary. Descent is an episode about, first off, we have Data playing a card game with Einstein, Isaac Newton, and Stephen Hawking, who is being played by Stephen Hawking, playing himself. That's kind of neat. Yeah. Stephen Hawking was a big fan of Star Trek. Got on the episode. That was neat. But they're interrupted with a distress call that they follow and find out it's a Borg attack. And they have an encounter with the Borg where violence ensues. And it turns out the Borg are acting differently. They seem to have achieved individuality. And then in the middle of the battle, Data is fighting a Borg and starts acting angry. And so this entire episode is them discussing why are the Borg acting different and why is Data experiencing his first emotion. These things come to a head at the end of the episode, the first episode of Descent, when they realize it is Lore who has brought them. They follow through the first mention of a transwarp conduit, which was cool. They follow the transwarp conduit to a planet where Lore has gathered a bunch of Borg together that have achieved individuality because of Hugh. The last episode we just covered, Borg. Hugh was returned to the collective and inspired a lot of other Borg individuals, and they have started to listen to Lore, and that leads us to Descent Part 2, where it's really a creepy episode. Data acting completely undata-like because he's under the influence of Lore, who is influencing him by disengaging his ethical chip and his ethical subroutine, I should say, and using the emotion chip to basically feed Data emotions, which he's never had before, and basically Data becomes an emotion junkie, and Lore tries to control him. Then in the end, they use a little bit of technobabble and some ingenuity from a blind Geordie to create a beam that reboots Data and causes his ethical subroutines to begin operating, and then he fights for their freedom. And in the last moment, right before Data is killed, Hugh jumps in and fights Lore, and the Borg start fighting for their own freedom. And then Hugh says, "But we're without a leader," and they say, "We don't think you are," basically saying that Hugh is their leader. And so they leave the Borg on this planet to, continue the work of trying to figure out how to be individuals and how to work as a group. And Data is left wondering if he'll ever have emotions again, because he thinks it was able to kind of override his ethical pursuits. And so he doesn't know that he'll ever want to have emotions again. And so that's where the episode leads off. Really pretty solid episode, and one that I think I mentioned in a previous episode of our podcast. It's the first episode I ever remember a cliffhanger. And Lore standing on that dais with Data at his side saying he's going to destroy the Federation, and a bunch of Borg surrounding our crew members. I was like, how are they going to get out of this one? And then it was like, you need to wait 3 months or whatever. Mm-hmm. It was very sad to me. little 9-year-old Matt or whatever was very upset.
Was that the one? I thought.
No, yeah, that's the one.
That was the one.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping it wasn't the case, but I've always remembered this episode boring the crap out of me. Or these episodes boring the crap out of me. It felt pretty much the same.
Yeah, this episode did not bore me as a child. I was very excited by it as a child, but as an adult, I will say I don't know that this one has a lot of... This was not my favorite episode.
Yeah, I almost feel like it may have been better as a single episode.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's really not much that happens. There's some really cool stuff, but it's all very plot driven. You talk about the different types of storytelling, where you have like interior storytelling and sort of exterior storytelling, and this is very much just like the bad guys get Data. It's not even like Data really has the chance to learn or decide something. It's the classic problem with the brainwash storyline, which everything we said about Data in Measure of a Man, how he has these, the ineffable quality of memory, and how he's not just, he doesn't want to be reprogrammed, he doesn't want to be taken apart. It's all kind of rewritten here with, Lore just has a chip that makes Data evil. A little beam that makes Data evil, and it kind of makes him, is he a man? Like, now I'm kind of skeptical based on this episode that he has much autonomy if he's that controllable by a simple switch, you know?
Yeah, and what's funny is stuff in this episode. This episode is almost just not canon, because there is stuff in this episode that's rewritten later on. There's the scene where he's torturing Geordi, and Geordi's trying to get him to remember their life. And he's talking about them fishing on the holodeck and how Data sunk like a stone. Yeah. And had no flotation device, so he had to walk all the way back to shore, and it took weeks to get all the water out of his servos. Mm-hmm. Do you remember Insurrection?
I do.
Where he jumps in the water and then activates his flotation device. It says, "I've been designed with a flotation device in case of a water landing." Interesting. And he walks around on the bottom of the ocean, or on the bottom of the lake, and comes up and he's fine. He's not getting water out of his servos and crap.
Well, we don't know that he wasn't getting water out of his servos. That servos are interior pieces that I'm assuming that could still be possible. Also, just to headcanon here, I understand it's probably just a flaw, but to headcanon it, he says I've been designed. He could have been designed later. Like, that could have been a refit, you know? Yeah. It could have been a refit after he fell in the lake that once back in the day. Geordi could have designed him some flotation devices. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit of a headcanon, not too impossible.
I know it doesn't matter to you, but the aesthetic of the chip changes drastically in Generations.
Oh, you mean the chip at the end? I thought you might have a problem with that, although he never... Wait, does he say it's his emotion chip?
Yeah, it's the emotion chip.
Okay, yeah, you're probably right. For some reason, I thought at that moment that he didn't actually say. He is examining a chip, and then they talk about the emotion chip, but I don't think he actually says this is the emotion chip.
Yeah, it is, but, it's not a problem with this episode because this episode came first. It's my problem with Generations later. You're right. It's the chip is suddenly the size of a human hand and looks like it's from the 80s.
Yeah. So, that's all well and good. But yeah, there's some flaws in the sort of canon of this episode. I enjoyed Crusher in Command, which we see again later in the series. Kind of fun. Yeah, I enjoyed it okay, except I found out that Tate was supposed to be Reginald Barkley, and they didn't have the time or money to get the real dude. Tate being the female officer behind. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's funny. It's weird, and maybe it's because I just remember this episode well from being a child, but I remember Tate really vividly. I was just like, I don't know if she just has an interesting look, but when she showed up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember her. Is she in any other episodes? That's weird. I don't think so. It is weird. And when I saw her, I was like, I don't know. Maybe she just had an interesting look. I don't know. I've seen these episodes 5 or 6 times, and I didn't remember her. That's weird. Yeah, it was strange. I remember their whole interaction, and I think it's literally just because this episode impressed on me. I remembered her little counterpart as well. The sort of the lieutenant that she's kind of playing off of and arguing with throughout the episode. I was like, I liked the whole dynamic of the bridge crew. I really did. It was fun. What I liked about it is it works well for all good things. When you look forward and go oh yeah, Beverly Crusher becoming captain, this might be the real seed of that happening. Yes, actually, in All Good Things, there's a girl falls dead. I just recently watched All Good Things, and a girl falls dead, and for a second I thought it was Tate. And I was like, did she get Tate on her ship and then they just didn't acknowledge it? Because that would be really cool continuity. Yeah. But I don't think I was right. I think about this episode, I like the sort of the juxtaposition of Hugh and the Borg becoming individuals, and
Data being an individual and having that taken away from him?
Yes, I agree. I felt like the juxtaposition was intentional, but I didn't feel like it was fully explored.
I don't know that it was fully explored. I think it would have been way more interesting if they had actually, if lore was playing into real desires that were there within Data.
Agreed.
Instead of it just being like thrown away at the end, like, oh well, he was just tapping into Data's negative emotions and basically brainwashing him with a carrier wave or whatever the hell Geordi called it.
Yeah, as much as there's a lot of complexity in this episode with the Borg and with him, it's in the end, it's just a brainwashing episode. And really the meat of the fun sci-fi is with the Borg and the Borg achieving individuality. And that's, by the way, what I wrote my song about this week is the Borg achieving individuality. And then it's so easy to be lured into servitude, or Lord, yeah. It's so easy to be lured into servitude of another voice when you're trying to be an individual for the first time. It's really easy to be like, well, I'll just take on, I lost this one collective. Why don't I just find some other voice to control me, And that's what happens here. And I think that's a really interesting thing they do with this episode, but I kind of felt like the Data stuff just sort of squashed this episode for me. Like it kind of overrides. Most of this episode is about Data as opposed to the very interesting concept of the Borg deciding to serve lore because of the promises he makes to them.
Yeah. And this episode highlights one of the problems that I think always had with lore. And it's not always, but there's been times where they did something a little different with lore. But he's just a mustache twirler here. He's not like, he doesn't have a real motive other than just being a bad guy for the sake of being a bad guy.
Well, I kind of disagree there in that I think he genuinely wants his brother to be a part of his life. I think he's not lying when he says his emotion chip is what drives him to have a strong sense of family. He says that, and then the reason I believe that is there's a moment when when Data has had his ethical subroutine rebooted, and he walks up to Lore and says, I need to figure these things out for myself. I need to figure out, I think I have a problem with the way we're treating the crew. I need to figure these things out for myself. And then Lore says, okay, Data, you're acting strange, but okay. And he walks off. And then there's a moment where the camera lingers on Lore and Lore looks very sad. And I think that he really does want Data on board. Like, I think this whole plan, he goes way above and beyond to bring Data here. If he just wanted to be a mustache twirler and have his own race of Borg that he could do whatever he wanted with, he could have just stayed here and continued to do the work. But he goes way out of his way, sending Croesus and the other Borg to infiltrate the Enterprise, convince Data to go with him. Because he gave him a taste of emotion and now he wants more. It's really interesting in that way. I think lore is interesting. I think the Borg are interesting. I don't think that Data is very interesting, and they feel like they spent so much of the episode, focused on Data. Yeah,
I think I'm going to argue that. Yeah, Lore's got that going on with wanting Data there, and obviously he goes out of the way to get Data there, and actually destroys his own probability of succeeding in his quest, just getting the Enterprise involved at all.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like he takes a huge risk, and it's all for Data, I think.
But I mean, like the actual plan itself to destroy the Federation with this group of Borg.
Oh yeah, that's pretty mustache twirly.
Like, what the hell is he even? What is his goal?
Well, I think he just has hatred for the Federation for stealing his brother, or like convincing his brother to hate him. Mm-hmm. But Lore's always been, like as you said, Lore's been a pretty extreme mustache twirler all along.
Yeah, I mean, at best, I could say he's like a Nolan Joker, Agent of Chaos type of character.
Well, and this is the problem with Next Generation. They walk a line between like high level science fiction and Power Rangers. And I mention that because I'm pretty sure this is actually the Power Rangers command center that they're working out of in this episode. But like this episode, you know, as an adult, as a kid, I loved it because I think it was resonating with exactly the kind of action that I wanted to see as a kid. Like good versus evil, and evil Data. What? Like, you know, not just his brother, but Data's actually evil now. Like that stuff really resonated with me as a 9-year-old. But as an adult, I watch it and go, what's actually the interesting part here? And I think that Next Generation tended to, it played in those fields of just good and evil sometimes. And that's why I find things like they did an evil Data in this episode, and every lore episode is basically evil Data. They also played with evil Riker in that episode where Riker comes up and, you know, is basically Thomas Riker comes up and is basically an evil Riker.
Was he?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen that episode in years, but
you're talking about Second Chances?
Is that where he's trapped on the planet?
Yeah, he wasn't evil. He just developed a little differently than Will, and kind of was brought. But they found him, and he was jealous of Will having had a life, and then angry that Will had squandered so much of his life pursuing a career. Thomas was like, "Oh, I'll never see Troy again," and he's like, comes back and he finds out, "Oh, I did get to live my life, and I didn't wind up there anyway. I chose to follow my career and be an idiot."
I may be being ignorant because I don't remember that episode well. I remember it being a dark version of Riker. Does he come back as he comes back as Maquis in DS9? I remember that.
He absolutely does.
And see, I was thinking that in DS9 they kind of humanize him more so, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the reverse.
I think he was just as humanized. He just went a very different way than Will did, and he came back posing as Will on DS9, and then wound up being a Maquis.
Right, but we also the number of times we have an evil version of the crew member is a little silly. I mean, obviously, we never even have a Mirror Universe episode, but that happens in a lot of the other series. But we do have, we also have in the movies, we have evil Picard with Shinzon. And it's just kind of like, you know, it feels like they want to show us something, you know. It feels like Power Rangers. I can't say it better than that. It just feels reductive in many ways. But I wish they had given Data a reason to leave. I wish they had spent time, you know, as DS9 would have. I wish they had spent time leading up to this episode, having Data feeling disaffected or something. Some reason he needs to leave. Maybe Federation makes the decision that they can dismantle him or something like that, you know, against his wishes. And maybe he leaves for that reason and then is kind of picked up by Lore. And that would have been a much better analog because then that's exactly what happened to the Borg. They no longer have a leadership and they let Lore become their leadership, you know?
Yeah. You know what bothered me is, you know, looking at Measure of a Man, it bothers me that Data decides to shut off and then disassemble Lore. Like, doesn't Lore have rights even though he's a bad guy? Do we just like disassemble and kill other bad guys? That's a great
point. Now yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Now I will say disassembling him in the way that Data disassembles him may be different from the way that, the crewman in Measure of a Man wants to disassemble him because he probably just turns him off. You know what I mean?
But it's still against Lore's will.
Sure, absolutely. But maybe it's not murder if they're not actually destroying, because what they're worried about is actually destroying what is Data. Now, Lore could later be reactivated, maybe when they understand him better, maybe when whatever. So it could be a little different. But I take your point. I think it's a great point.
And I think that would have been a cooler thing to do in Nemesis too. If they had,
oh yeah, absolutely.
If they had been like, oh, it's a new cyborg or a new android, and then they think it's B4, but it turns out to be Lore in disguise, that would have been interesting.
I think maybe, but I also think that I just didn't need another Data.
I didn't either.
I think Data is such a singular character, and having so many different versions, the 3 different versions we have of him, every one of them feels like it waters the character down. Makes it sort of reductive. Like Lore just feels like evil Data, and before feels like child Data, and I don't know, and neither one feels like they enhance his character very much.
But if it had been, if B4 had turned out to be really Lore in disguise, and then Data was going on the suicide mission, he could have basically put the Katra over into Lore, and it would have created a more interesting character. Because he would have been able to handle all of Data's memories. It would have changed Lore on a fundamental level. It would have put them together for all time, as Lore apparently wanted. But also, he wouldn't be evil anymore because, Data would have changed him. It would have been more interesting than what they did.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right, but mostly just because what they did was not great.
Yeah, I would have fought Brent Spiner tooth and nail. Like, you are not killing this character. Just because you're getting older. That's so stupid.
Yeah, and then comes back 30 years later or whatever. All right. Well, any other big moments on this episode you want to touch on?
I was bummed out that Hugh didn't actually even have a scene with Geordi.
I was going to say that, actually. I have that exact thing in my notes. When he jumps forward to save Data, there's so many cool things they could have written here. They could have written, instead of having Hugh just spontaneously decide to come help, they could have had Hugh discover that Geordi was about to be killed and then come help because his friend's in danger, And then suddenly...
Well, that's basically what happened.
Well, no, they're about to kill Data. He jumps in front of... He basically jumps in front of a phaser for Data, and I'm like...
But the reason he's there in the first place is because he said, tell me about my friend Geordi, and they said that he's being held.
I agree, but we never got to see him have that change of heart at all.
We did. We totally did. Like, as they're walking away, Hugh was looking sad and looking down because he's ashamed that he's not going to help, and then he, looks up after them, and it totally looks like, oh, I'm going to go. Okay.
Well, I agree. I agree that the thread is there for that to be why he did what he did, but I feel like they could have made it much stronger by having it actually be Geordi.
I agree.
That he rushes out to save. I just think that, and just like you said, have a scene where Geordi meets Hugh.
Yeah.
I'm really kind of hopeful. I just read the first book of the new Countdown series, which I'm sure we'll probably cover, but we'll cover it as all 3 parts, probably, I'm assuming. And
we will?
Yeah, right? Don't you want to?
Oh, okay. I want to. I just don't know that I'll have it before the show comes out.
Oh, well, I have it on digital. I can share it with you somehow, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, then, sure.
Yeah, we'll cover it because it's the Countdown to Picard. We're doing so much to Countdown to Picard. Why not actually do the Countdown to Picard? But
I agree. But
Geordi's already in the story in the first book, and I'm really I'm hoping that Hugh and Geordi at some point meet. If not in the comic, in the show. I just it would be really nice to see that they have remained like friends through all these years of Hugh trying to develop his individuality, and maybe Geordi helping to engineer the hive, the new Borg community, however that works.
Dude, gosh, if they have Hugh in this show and they don't have Geordi, I am going to be so bummed and surprised. Like, I expect Geordi to be a total surprise guest. Yeah, on this show.
Also, after the episode that Hugh became an individual, Borg, and Geordi being such a huge part of that, and the reason he does it, the reason he decides to go against the Locutus is for is for Geordi, and then to have another episode where Hugh comes back and they don't have them interact, and then to have an entire show where Hugh is going to be a character and then never have them interact would be such a missed opportunity.
I agree.
Worst part of this episode, most brutal part of this episode is Data pretending to be Picard when he's experimenting on Geordi.
Yeah, it was rough.
WTF, Data? Come on, man.
I love Geordi's reaction though, where he's just like, "Yeah, you need to keep working on that sense of humor, buddy.
Needs some work, buddy. Needs some work." Yeah, LeVar Burton is really, really great in this episode.
Yeah, and Brent Spiner is really great. Honestly, like,
yeah, I agree.
I feel like they have lore as a character just to showcase. By the way, he could do other things. He could be not Data. He could be like really, like, motivated, maniacally evil. Like that bit where Croesus asked him if he would kill Geordi to feel those emotions again, and he said yes, I would. Mm-hmm. That was creepy as hell, dude, and I believed him. Yeah.
No, all the stuff where Data is he's a junkie. It really is, like, the drug analogy is fully there. He had a taste of emotions and he wants more. And it's interesting, but I feel like they could have done that in a way. If they hadn't disengaged his ethical subroutine, I feel like this whole episode would have been better. But because they disengaged his ethical subroutine, there's nothing to fight back against his decisions. It's just him deciding to be what he wants to do, which is basically they literally turn him into a mustache twirling villain, which is not what literally means. I apologize.
Right.
Let's talk about how we think this episode will inform the Picard series.
Okay.
Because I think that, that's why we're doing this particular rewatch anyway. So obviously there's a lot of Data stuff here and a lot of Hugh stuff. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is very practical and exposition-y. We know where we're leaving Hugh off because of this episode. He's in a leadership role of this Borg collective, and I think that's probably where we'll pick him up, but just a lot of years later. So what have the Borg gone through in the 30 years,
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me. I'm so excited they're bringing Hugh back. Like, it kind of blows my mind that that's happening. Still, months after the reveal.
I'm surprised that they're bothering.
Yeah, right? It makes me feel like they see me. I feel seen by them bringing Hugh back. These two episodes are two of my favorite episodes of Star Trek Next Generation, and it just means a lot that they're going to have Hugh back. Picard's relationship with the Federation and the Borg, I found very interesting, given what we know about the new show. The Admiral has a conversation with Picard and basically questions all of his decisions in Borg, saying, you had a Borg drone right here, and then you just returned him to the collective. Like, that's not okay. We don't do that. If you ever have a chance to destroy the Borg again, you do it, she says.
She said that's an order.
Yeah.
And Picard had a weird look on his face, like he wanted to do, because he was like, I can't go against my morals and blah, blah. And she says, okay, that's an order then. Do this. And he got this, like, sort of reticent look, but jumped up and said, yes, sir. And in that moment when he said it, it justified everything in First Contact. It was like, oh, well, now I have orders to do the thing that I actually want to do. Does that make sense?
Expound on what you mean.
It means that I feel like Picard has something within him because of his experience with the Borg that he wants to kill them. And he fought it in Borg because of his own morals.
This character turned off his ethical subroutine.
Yeah, like now that he's being ordered to do it, and it's not up to him, he's down. All right. Yeah.
No, that's an interesting point. I like that.
But I feel like if Picard, because we do know Picard and we have seen Picard do this sort of thing before, if he had actually disagreed with her, and we knew that at the beginning of the episode he was concerned about his decisions there anyway. He was, what if that was the wrong decision? What if the right decision was actually the wrong decision?
Yeah. Yeah, so, he's being told here he was wrong. And he's not above thinking that. So
right. And I would even argue that a part of him wants to believe he was wrong because it would make things a lot easier. And actually having orders from a superior officer telling you, you kill those bastards.
Yeah.
That's what he wants to hear. Like, we've seen Picard rail against the system before and stand up for what's right.
Also, in that moment, there's not a direct decision to be made. Like, that situation is over. You know what I mean? So it's not like he can make that decision now. Mm-hmm. But that's interesting, man. I had to look it up. I don't know who the Admiral is in the new Star Trek Picard show.
Nechayev? Oh.
In the new Star Trek Picard show. I don't know who that Admiral is, but I was like, I wonder if it's the same Admiral. Because that would be when he's yelling at that Admiral, like, this is not what the Federation stands for, or whatever,
Yeah. No, it's not her.
But it's not her. I just had to look.
I wish it would be, because it feels like he had more confrontations with Admiral Nechayev than he did anybody else.
Oh, yeah?
She did not like Picard, man.
Interesting. I need to watch more episodes of that. But yeah, I just think it's interesting, given the Borg are going to be a part of this, and it looks like the Borg are going to be, at least, we're going to have empathy for these particular Borg. And if the Federation still have a hatred for the Borg, what does that mean? Like, is the conversation he's having with the Admiral in the trailer for Picard the same conversation we're having right here? And is his legend sort of marred by the fact that he had a chance to destroy the Borg and he didn't? You know what I mean? Like, I'd love to hear that conversation play out again. Like, we had to deal with 30 years of more Borg activity because you didn't do what you had a chance to do, Yeah. So, thought that was really interesting. Any other things that kind of relate to how Picard might play out?
I can't think of anything specifically.
Yeah, I can't either. I look forward to seeing how the main two things are the way that Hugh ends up as a leader in this sort of splinter cell of the Borg. Which I wondered as I was watching this, did they have the idea that this was a splinter cell in the Borg, or did they think the entire Borg collective was now individuals?
I don't think they had that. No, they were a splinter cell. Okay. They were a group of individual Borg. Like a number of Borg were infected by Hugh and his individuality. Yeah,
the way they say it, they never actually say in the episode that, like, in this particular episode, that there's still a bunch of Borg out there. They keep saying, like, the Borg, they keep saying things like the Borg are acting differently. The Borg have evolved. And it's kind of like, it almost seems like when they wrote this episode, they didn't know that this was a splinter cell of the Borg. They might have thought that this is what the Borg was now. But I don't know. I do not know. Okay, cool. Well, you got any quotes? I did not write any quotes down.
A couple. When they had the big false alarm, and then Picard tells Worf, transmit another copy of Starfleet ship recognition protocols and tell them to read it this time.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Man, they have a copy of that on their computer files, man. You just being a dick.
Oh, yeah. Totally being a dick. That's like totally passive-aggressive bullshit right there.
And when Data deactivates Lore, and they love having Data have to deactivate his brothers, man. And it's always so sad. It's always so sad.
It is. And it's sadder now that you put it in the context of Measure of a Man. Like, he obviously fights for his own individuality and right to live, and then he goes around deactivating everyone like him.
And am I crazy? Or is this the last time we ever see Lore?
I think this is the last time we ever see Lore.
And he does say goodbye, Lore.
Yeah, and I wonder if Lore's still out there, and if there's a story to be told, either in Picard or wherever, Lore could come back, or that his positronic brain could store Data's consciousness or whatever. I don't know. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of discussion also in this story about what means to be a good or a bad person. And Data fearing that he's a bad person because he can only experience negative emotions is what he's going through anyway. And that was an interesting conversation. And there's just a whole lot to explore there. And I don't feel like they did that with this episode. No. This episode's a little thin for how many things they bring up, and it just feels like it revels in the fact that there's an evil Data instead of dealing with any of the actual ethical issues of what it means to be an evil Data. I want more. I want more from this episode.
I wanted more from this episode. This episode felt like it was a two-parter for the sake of being a season ender. Yeah,
I agree. And that pissed me off so much when I was 9. What year did this come out?
Oh, I don't know.
I keep saying 9.
Wasn't it the season 6 finale?
Yes, it was a season 6 finale. So, and this came out in 89. Is that right? Like the series started in 89.
I think the series started in 87.
This was 93. So yeah, I was 10 years old when this came out.
Okay. I as much as I feel like he's a mustache twirler, I do like lore. So
yeah, it's fun to watch Brent Spiner play something different, and that's why they do it. They did it because it was fun. It's just kind of like sometimes they do things on this show because they're fun, and they forego having them have any sense or impact or good storytelling. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those cases, and I hate it because I like the character of Hughes so much. I wish they'd just foregone the entire Data storyline for this episode and maybe had the whole like Data being evil as a different episode and just focused on Lore being the leader of the Borg collective or whatever. That would have been nice. That would have been a cool way to do this.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. In conclusion, lore, have some more. We like it more than before. I don't know.
That's true. We do. I don't even know if that's true. I don't know that I like lore more than before. Before
was just.
Do you think that F8 is going to factor into the new show heavily?
Oh. Do you think F8 is really fate?
Well, yeah, that's the point. Like they always do this. They do like weird combinations. Like, well, they did it with B4. And,
they did it with B4.
Now in the trailer, F8 is one of the main one of the androids that we see. So I wonder if that is going to be one of our like main character androids, just because they named him that.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I did not get that until just now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just didn't. I'm not a millennial proper. I don't it takes me a minute.
You just haven't. You're just not a big Fast and the Furious stan because they did Fate of the Furious, F8 of the Furious.
That's right. Yeah, I've never seen one of those movies.
You want to cover them with me for our new podcast we're working on?
No, I don't.
All right, I'll find somebody to cover the Fast and the Furious with me. What you got for trivia, Dave?
All right, I got a lot of trivia. The title Descent came from an original draft script which had the Enterprise crash land on the planet.
Oh.
And at the time, and this is pretty dark, at the time the 6th season wrapped, neither Marina Sirtis or Gates McFadden had signed on for season 7, so Troy and Crusher were separated, and the idea of the Enterprise crashing was proposed in case there was a need to write either of them out of the show.
Wow.
That's messed up.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. Especially a way to... are you just going to come back to a dead character? That's such a bad way to end a character.
Yeah, I mean, they, I was just reading in the trivia for Face of the Enemy, where Troy is a Romulan.
Yeah.
That they initially thought they might want to... They mentioned that it was Spock that they were trying to carry or whatever, that this person that they had, and then it was going to be unveiled that it was somebody else, and that person, they were like, well, where's Ambassador Spock? And they say he didn't make it. they were seriously going to kill Spock off screen
Wow.
in Next Generation. And then they were like, nah, we can't do that. And then, of course, subsequently, they wound up doing that in Star Trek Beyond because Leonard Nimoy passed away.
Wow. Yeah, but at least in this
That was
version,
different.
little Leonard Nimoy got a nice swan song in 2009's Trek.
Yeah. But anyway, that's just an aside. This is the only Star Trek episode in which the episode title and guest star credits appear in the teaser before the main opening sequence. And they, on Memory Alpha posits, it may have been done so as to not just detract from the action of the phaser fight between the away team and the Borg, which was the majority of Act 1.
Okay.
Alternatively, they say it might have been done because the credits would have run longer than Act 1 itself.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Stephen Hawking, appearing as himself, is the only actor to ever play himself in the Star Trek franchise.
Interesting.
In one of the few identical shooting sites used by both the original series and the Next Generation, besides Vasquez Rocks, the oak-studded hillside scene just before Lor's Fortress is spotted was the same location used for Spock and Leela's discussion of rainbows and dragons in the original series, This Side of Paradise.
That's really cool.
Now, this is a cool technical thing. I included it because I thought you would like it.
Sweet.
Although many Borg appear on screen in the final scenes, only 11 extras were used. They were limited by the available wardrobe. They were multiplied using split-screen overlays.
Huh. That's neat. That's really neat.
And to your point earlier in this episode, they did say it's not very apparent or recognizable. I recognized it right away. The Borg building in this episode is totally the Brandis Barden Institute, and that is the command center power chamber for the first 5 seasons of Power Rangers.
Yeah, I immediately recognized it.
And they used it in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. They repainted it in a matte painting as Camp Kittimer.
Oh, that's fun. Why is Lore taking over Camp Kittimer?
Yeah, I mean, but this is a real place you can go to.
That's cool. Let's go take a picture there. Let's do it, man. Let's hop in a car tomorrow and just go to California or wherever.
No.
Take a picture at at Zoron's headquarters.
Yeah. Oh, here's another bit where this episode is kind of
Lordon? Lore?
Oh.
Wait, Zordon. Yeah, Zordon.
Yeah, Lordon. Man, yeah, that works.
Yeah, it checks out. Sorry, for a second I was thinking Lord Zed. I was like, wait, they're both Z's. Yeah. I guess when you're writing a kid's show, you need things to start with Z.
In this episode, this is going back to how this episode is somewhat out of sync with continuity. In this episode, Data says, I believe I've experienced my first emotion. However, in the episode Deja Q, Data experiences a brief moment of laughter, which he then describes as a wonderful feeling.
Yep. That seems like a flaw.
Yep. 2 starship naming firsts are made in this episode. The USS Crazy Horse is the first named after a Native American, and the USS Gorkon is the first named for a non-human individual, Klingon Chancellor Gorkon. Again, from Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
Yeah. That's cool.
Played by David Warner.
Of that 70s show fame, right? Wait, who? I was thinking of the other guy. Sorry, no. Who's he play in Star Trek 6?
Oh, you talking about Kurtwood Smith?
Maybe.
He's the president. He's the Red Foreman is the he was Red Foreman on 70 show.
Yeah.
He was the president. He was the Federation president in Star Trek 6.
Right.
David Warner played the Klingon Chancellor of the High Council, Gorkon. He previously played St. John Talbot in Star Trek 5, and he was the Cardassian who had Picard strung up naked and kept telling him, or kept asking him how many lights he saw in Chain of Command.
Interesting.
And of course, Batman fans know him as the voice of Ra's al Ghul in Batman the Animated Series.
Yes. I just always find it weird that they picked whatever race the president of the Federation played by Red Foreman and whatever his name is, it looks so much like a Klingon. I always get confused when thinking about that movie. I'm like, that was the Klingon guy, right?
Yeah, I don't think he was a Klingon.
He was not.
But he 100% certain he wasn't. But
I'm 100% certain because he wasn't, because he was the president of the Federation when they're at war with the Klingons. But like, he looks a lot like a Klingon. I think we've discussed this before. It's like a really weird choice for a show that does so much to cater to children. To put a guy who looks so much like a Klingon in a place of leadership in the Federation, it was like really weird. I don't know. It's weird. It was a weird choice. You can go with any alien race there.
He did look a lot like a Klingon.
Yeah, like the hair and everything. It's very Klingon looking.
Do you know about the number 47 thing? How they always try to work the number 47 into the next generation?
No,
the subsequent series. The number 47 makes frequent recurrences in dialogues and on computer screens in Star Trek. It's traced to the Next Generation and Voyager writer Joe Menosky, who attended Pomona College in California. There is a club at Pomona called the 47 Society, which claims that there exists a mathematical proof that all numbers are equal to 47, and that the number 47 occurs with greater frequency in nature than other numbers. 74 makes frequent reappearances as well. And he started including references to 47 in his scripts in the 4th season of TNG, and the in-joke quickly caught on among the rest of the staff. Since then, references to 47 have been included in many episodes and movies of all the modern series.
Interesting.
According to Ronald D. Moore, the number of 47 references in later seasons of DS9 declined as the production staff tired of the joke.
Makes sense. I can see asked about not like a great joke.
When asked about the significance of the number, Rick Berman once joked, 47 is 42 corrected for inflation.
That's good.
Which is referring to 42 being the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, according to the Hitchhiker's Guide of the Galaxy.
Absolutely.
It says, one of the most subtle references to the number 47 occurs in this episode. Stephen Hawking's poker hand consists of 4 of a kind, 4 sevens.
Oh, nice.
And then in Descent Part 2, there are 47 crew members left on the planet after Dr. Crusher takes the Enterprise out of orbit. Now, this is interesting, and I didn't realize it when it was going on. I knew something was happening. It made me feel like a kid again. Hawking's off-screen remark, which Newton doesn't understand, is a bit of an inside joke. Einstein understands the joke. You got it?
Yeah.
Good.
I probably only get it because I literally just watched a documentary about... I shouldn't say that. Let's say this. I just get it. I get it because I know all about quantum physics.
Right.
No, there's a reference to... he's wrong again, is what he says. He's like, you're wrong again, Einstein. And the whole joke is because Einstein always said that the quantum theory, the quantum field theory, the prevailing quantum field theory was wrong, that it was spooky action at a distance, and that it wasn't right. It just meant we still didn't fully understand it, which, I still don't fully understand why Einstein's wrong on that one. I've watched a whole documentary about it, and I'm like, I still think Einstein might be right. I still think there might be something going on we just don't understand yet. We just haven't seen deep enough to understand it. But I don't fully understand all the Schrodinger stuff. I need more documentaries.
All right, so apparently this was a little bit more layered. His off-screen remark that Newton doesn't understand is a bit of an inside joke. It says, Einstein understands the joke, and Data, who has no sense of humor, understands that a joke has been made and appreciates it, but Newton doesn't get it. Data explains that the joke is based on knowledge about the perihelion precession of the planet Mercury, before Newton angrily cuts him off, saying, don't patronize me, I invented physics. But the perihelion precession of Mercury could not be explained by Newtonian physics alone, and was regarded as a major flaw of Newton's theory.
I see. So I'm sorry. I thought the other thing was a joke because it was the other thing about Einstein being wrong again.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean the perihelion precession of Mercury was later explained by Einstein's general theory of relativity. But Hawking's comment, wrong again, Albert, when revealing his winning hand, was a reference to basically his entire life, which he was just like disproving a bunch of Einstein's theories over the course of his life.
Yes. Okay, got it. That's a very fun scene.
And I did get that one, the wrong again, Albert, and I got the joke about Einstein being bad with math, which was it's not true. He was actually so brilliant that he began teaching himself higher math when he outpaced his schooling. So
right.
This is great. In his foreword to the physics of Star Trek, Stephen Hawking jokingly wrote that after winning the holodeck game card, he called Paramount Pictures to try and cash in his chips, but they didn't know the exchange rate.
That's funny.
During the filming of the episode, Stephen Hawking was taken on a tour of the set. While on the bridge, he requested to be helped into the captain's chair. And in engineering, he paused in front of the warp core and said, "I'm working on that."
Man, Stephen Hawking's funnier than I knew.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Beverly's support of the experimental metaphasic shielding technology was the focus of the episode's suspicions.
Was that a prior episode to this one?
I think so.
That's neat. That's real cool.
If I remember correctly. According to Jonathan Del Arco, Rick Berman said in an interview, the storyline that ended in Descent 2 will be continued later in the season. You'll find out what happens to this group of Borg that are left with me on the planet. You don't know what is going to happen. It really depends on if the audience wants to see the characters again. I think one reason Hugh came back is they got a lot of mail. A reprisal of Hugh on DS9 was also not out of the question. However, Hugh was never seen again on screen in either TNG or DS9.
But he's about to be.
He is about to be. And that's all I've got.
I think it leads us to a good ending place. Well, here goes our next song for this week. This is my song I wrote this week about this episode. It's called Just a Drone. And it's really good. Thanks, man.
Total earworm.
Thanks, man. I'm going to choose to take that as very sincere.
It actually is. It actually is. It's even popping in my head since I listened to it. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
It's totally different, though.
And my favorite thing about this, I mentioned it earlier, that a lot of these songs are actually really meaningful to me. The Borg have this belief that they're going to assimilate the entire universe, and it's what's best for the universe, and it is what they're going to do. They're sure of it. They're sure of themselves. And in writing this song, I kind of drew on my own experiences of my changes in my faith journey, which I don't know. It was just really a neat way to, I kind of drew that connection when I was watching Borg last week. And then as I was writing this song, it kind of came out in the writing, and I just really enjoy sort of the layered nature of this song. But also, it's just a fun song. It's just fun. It's a fun little ditty. So enjoy. This is Just a Drone.
Just a drone, trying to make it in this life on my own. No voices in my head, no cue to call home. I'm just a drone. I never longed for freedom, I was happy to serve. I found comfort in the millions and billions I heard. Cause in the hive you're never alone. You're surrounded by family, you're home. I never had to navigate this complexity. What I'd machinate was spoon-fed to me. But along came the Enterprise, and my Wii's turned to eyes. I'm just a drone, trying to make it in this life on my own. No voices in my head, no cue to call home. I'm just a drone. This life of being one, it's fraught with choices and questions, but answers I have none. There's this limit to my processing power. I can't be sure what might happen this next hour. What's it worth to be an individual? If it hurts, it makes you so damn cynical. I guess I'm willing to pay that, because I know I can't go back. I'm just a drone, trying to make it in this life on my own. No voices in my head, no cue to call home. I'm just a drone. tempting to let any voice come rushing in. I'm so lonely. A strong voice to take the lead and tell me who they think that I should be. Just a drone, trying to make it in this life on my own. No voices in my head, no cube to call home. I'm just a drone, trying to make it in this life on my own. No voices in my head, no cube to call home. I'm just a drone.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at Star Trek Ucast on Twitter, or search for the Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. And if you want to hear more from David C. Robertson, search for the DC On Screen podcast in your podcast app now, or go to maladjusted.tv for his comedy sketches. If you want to hear more from me, Matthew Carroll, search for the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or the Orville Universe podcast in your podcast app, or check out my music. Just search for Matthew Carroll wherever you listen to music.